Welcome to Successful Dropout. This community is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those who dare to defy the status quo, step off the conveyor belt, and claim the best version of their life. I'm your host, Kylon Gienger. Welcome to the movement that is Successful Dropout. What is up, Successful Dropouts? I'll be brief here. This week I wanted to share an interview that I did on Stephen Warley's Life Skills That Matter podcast. And Stephen is an amazing guy. We did an interview swap. I had him on Successful Dropout, and you can go listen to his episode. It's episode 78. He's got a lot of cool stuff going on. He's very heavily involved in this massive movement in society towards, the way we approach work and building a career and educating ourselves. He's a friend of the show. We'll just put it that way. He's very active in the Facebook group, and he's got his own Facebook group that's going really well. I would highly encourage you to go check out his stuff. But we did an interview swap, and so this week I wanted to share him interviewing me on his podcast because I think it went pretty well. I don't share a lot of interviews of myself, only really when I'm really proud of them, and this is one I'm really proud of, and I go into some stuff that I don't think I've talked about on this show even, and so I think you guys will find it interesting, and I hope you enjoy it and gain some value from it. I had a blast. Stephen, again, is awesome. I can't say enough good things about the guy, but yeah, hope you guys enjoy.
Kylon is the host of the popular Successful Dropout podcast, and I was actually on his show, and I'll include a link to that in the show notes. And he interviews people who dropped out of college or dropped out of traditional employment, like myself. He manages several businesses, including a hot yoga studio, real estate investing, and an online affiliate marketing community called affiliatefix.com. We had such a fun conversation and covered a lot of different topics, including rethinking the American dream, calculating the cost of your ideal lifestyle, moving from a permission mindset to a freedom mindset, what Kylon learned from trying so many different career paths, and he tried a lot of different things. And he also explains the concept of self-credentialing and how it relates to the future of work. Hey, Kylon, I am so excited to talk about all the different projects that you're working on and how you became a successful dropout.
I'm stoked to be here, Stephen.
So what does it mean to be a successful dropout?
I'm still trying to figure that out, to be quite honest.
You've dropped out of college, right?
Yeah, so you can look at it a few different ways. I have successfully dropped out. So I've successfully quit something. So you can,
or you've dropped out of the nutritional economy in a way. I haven't thought of it. That's another thing you kind of dropped out of, maybe.
Actually, now that the community has grown, we don't just get people who've dropped out of school. We get people who I'm sure are members of like-minded members of your community who have dropped out of sort of the 9 to 5, I guess, so to say. So I've done, I guess you could say, both of those. Then the other way you can look at it is now that I am a dropout, and I have been for several years, am I actually becoming more successful? And I would argue yes. I don't think there's ever really a stopping point, like an ultimate, like I've made it, now I'm successful. But it's an ongoing journey, for sure.
I always feel like that's another thing I feel like I've dropped out of, is the idea of buying into the American dream. I'm like, that's only one version of a dream. It's not what I want. You know what I mean? And I love that we're moving to this era of having authorship over our dream of what success means.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like what you and I were talking about before we started the show here, is that American dream. I feel like we're starting to have this mental shift. A lot of people are starting to have this mental shift where instead of, going to college, getting a job, middle class, white picket fence, couple cars, 4 kids, like people want more. They want more autonomy now. They want more like freedom and authenticity and like personal responsibility, and to be able to manage like their time and their efforts, how they how they see fit. And with technology and different like newer dynamic companies and startups allowing, their workforce to work remotely and stuff like that, we're getting more to where that's a lot more accessible than it has been in even just the last like 5 years, for instance.
Yeah, I feel like all those status symbols, all those goals are somebody else's goals that we all felt like we were supposed to have to feel good about ourselves. And it turns out that it's just they're getting harder and more expensive to attain. And then you're like, why do we even want to take care of a 3,000 square foot house? What's the point?
It's hilarious that you mentioned that, because like we're at the place right now where going into this year, we're looking at buying a plot of land here in the area and building or buying a house, something. We just want to get another property and move. And I don't know. Like I look at my parents, I look at some of my relatives who they're a little bit further along in years and in their careers. And now they're sort of starting to buy all these big mansions and all the things that they've had on, vision boards and goal sheets for their whole life. But it's like now that we're getting to the point where we're starting to dream about those things and like what kind of house do we want to build, stuff like that. I'm thinking, like just the other day, my wife and I were talking. It's like we don't want that big of a place. Like maybe 1,500 square feet is okay.
Yes,
like we just don't need that much. And even right now, I noticed I did look at your interview flow, and I noticed the last question is what was it, like how much are your expenses each month, or how much money are you living off of each month, or something like that. I mean, for us, it's not that much compared to what we make. I mean, we're not millionaires yet. That'll be I plan on that soon, of course. But we live off of like $3,000 a month. Maybe
let me challenge you right there. We were just talking about sense of like why I always tell people, like a lot of people say like, I want to be a millionaire or I want to make six figures. And I was like, why? Where that number come from? Mm-hmm. And that's why I kind of guide people down of like, why do you calculate like what you're living on or what you want to do and understand what that number is, because it kind of changes our relationship to money. You know what I'm saying? Because to me, that other idea, and if that's your goal, that's fine. I'm just challenging you here. But it's understanding like, why do you want that?
Dude, yeah. I mean, it's so good to hone in on that stuff. And I remember we did an entire episode about the title was, "Do you really want to be a millionaire?" And we really dove deep into that. Like that's what people sort of think. It's this, you've achieved some sort of success when you have $1 million net worth, whatever that looks like. But like you said, the question is, why exactly do you want that? What kind of lifestyle do you want? Now I said that because it's exactly what it sounds like. Like that's a psychological goal that, I would like to be a millionaire. I'd like to know before, my days are over that I was a millionaire. That's just something I want to do. But, the difference is that I don't set my goals necessarily, I guess, primarily with that objective in mind. Like I don't make my choices day to day on, say, like what to pursue, what to build, what business to build next, based on becoming a millionaire. I used to do that, and the result was just I was more of a workaholic than anything else. And that's what you'll find with people. They say they want X amount of money in 5 years or something like that. So they do anything they can to make that money. Maybe they actually end up making it, but you'd be surprised at how many of them end up just miserable still as a result, because they've done whatever it takes to make that money, and it's led to doing things and hanging out with people and just spending your time in ways that you don't really enjoy and pursuing things that you're not really curious about. So my goals are all set with the primary focus being like, how do I want to spend my time and who do I want to spend my time with? And the money, I believe, sort of comes as a result of that. If that makes sense.
It totally does in my world, because I call it, really making intentional use of your time and your energy, and then knowing what it is that you want to do or create or who you want to interact with, turning that into daily habits. And then if you do that over and over again and you enjoy it, you get better, that should turn into money.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to oversimplify
right now, but yeah, I think what I'm doing right now, the things that I'm building right now, I think in somewhere between 2 to 5 years time, I think they will net me $1 million plus, hopefully more. But again, I'm not doing the things I'm doing because I want that money. I'm doing the things I'm doing because I actually want to do them. And I want to spend my time this way, and I want to hang out with these people and be in these groups. And so that was a big mind shift or paradigm shift for me. Maybe, I don't know. Well, it was like a couple of years into my entrepreneurial journey after starting my first business. You just eventually realize, like, working for money sucks. Like, I just want to work. I want to work for my ideal lifestyle. But I do notice that, you talk a lot about like target monthly income and like what does it actually take to live your ideal lifestyle. And I do have that figured out, What
is
honestly,
that?
It was around, let's see, last time we went over it, my wife and I, it was between like 17 and 18K a month. And for us, I think that's really realistic in the next few years. And what that gets me is to
generate the income that you want to generate, not what you live off of. You don't need $17,000 a month to live.
So what we did is we basically wrote down in like 5-10 years, like when we're in our 30s, like what are all the things that we actually want? Like, let's be really selfish and materialistic here. And we wrote all those down. And so like it was from like, I want a Tesla eventually. I just think that'd be really cool. I want a Ford F-150, the newest model. I want to live in this location, like where we are now, but our own custom built home. And again, something not huge, but all these things sort of, and then we want to do a lot of travel and some philanthropy, stuff like that. So all of those things added up to approximately, like, it was between 15 and 18K a month that we would need to generate to sort of, live sort of this ideal lifestyle that we wanted to.
Gotcha.
And I'm talking about materialistic things again. Because right now, like I said, we live off of like $3,000 a month. We live well below our means, and we're extremely happy with that too. But again,
and like also it's the trap of, I think you're already building up really amazing financial habits in that, like you said, living below your means, that even if you're generating $15,000 to $17,000 a month, that you probably still find a way to be living well below that. Because I think that's the trap that holds people back from doing what they really want to do in life, that they get. When you're an employee, your income keeps tracking up, and usually your spending just tracks up as your income goes up. And then if you get laid off, you quit your job, you're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore, and I want to make a change. That's where people really get stuck. You're like, but I love this lifestyle. I've gotten so used to it, but now I have to make less money. How do I do this? And it's like, well, you're going to have to make some tough choices.
Exactly. So, I mean, as our income has grown over like the last few years, you're absolutely right. Like our spending, like we're only spending like $700-800 a month more now than when we were first married, like 7 years ago. So
that's awesome.
So, and that's 7 years. No, it's like 5 years, because we didn't start building businesses right after we were married. But that's, through 5 years of building businesses. And I notice you do have a question that I think you ask sometimes, that was, what's the most important life skill that's enabled you to become self-employed? And for me, if we're talking about hard skills, not soft skills, hard skills, it would be financial management, hands down. The ability to budget. We do the cash envelope system. I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey at all.
Absolutely.
I like about like 40-50% of what not 100% of what he preaches, but the cash envelope system is very valuable. So we still do that like to this day. And it's an amazing feeling to know that we are doing and building the things that we want to build, and we're spending our time the way we want to spend it. We're hanging out with the people we want to hang out with. And that took time and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get there. We might go into those stories. But
you're living a life out of intention instead of reacting like so many of us are. At least I was at one point in my life.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember looking at my wife the other day, and I told her, if we had $5 million just airdropped into our bank account tomorrow, just cash and already taxed everything, I don't think our lifestyle would change that much. like as far as how we spend our time and who we spend our time with. We would buy some cool stuff, and that's what I'm talking about. Like I want to buy the Tesla. Like who doesn't? I want to get the new truck, and I want to go helicopter skiing like once a week. That costs like $3,000 just for a trip, right?
Sure.
Those are things I want to do, but so a few things would change. But as far as like our overall happiness and like what we do on a day-to-day basis, that really wouldn't change. And that's a really, really freeing feeling to have. Like it sort of releases you from this need to like make money. Like I have to, reach these certain financial benchmarks. When you stick to doing what you love and building what you love, as long as it's working, I think it'll pay off again in a few more years here.
Well, you're doing the hardest thing is that you're honoring who you really are, what you really want to do. You've done that work. And no matter what else is going on externally, you're going to say, this is what works for me and I'm going to keep going forward. And that's really hard, because as human beings, we're so easily influenced by other human beings.
Oh, dude, you nailed it. Because that's probably one of the number one barrier that everybody who listens to my show and who is a part of the Successful Dropout community, like the majority of our community they're between 16, 25 years old, high school, college students. And that is the biggest barrier that they have to overcome. And most of them don't even understand that it's a barrier to overcome, that they've grown up in such a sort of a structured, tracked environment, and they've grown up with this permission mentality. Like you have to gain some sort of permission before you can move on to the next step. You have to earn a high school diploma before you can go to college, and a college degree before you can get a good job. And there's sort of
and you have to wait for somebody to give you a job before you can start working. Which to me,
somebody who's more credentialed than you are.
No, but I mean, even that radical idea to me is like you and I will. If something pops into our head, we're going to start working on it, even if we don't necessarily get paid for it immediately in the short term.
Yeah.
That's a radical shift in your thinking, I mean, so many people are like, oh, I won't do anything until they tell me I have a job and they sign the contract.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is just, it's conditioned thinking. It's fear of taking risks. It's fear of failure, because what happens when you fail in the formal schooling system? You get a big red F. People judge you. You're sort of put in this category. You're not very smart. And you're
also being a straight A student is not a picnic either. You know what I mean? Because then you're typecast, and there's all that pressure to have to keep that up.
Yeah, exactly. No, and so that's one of the biggest barriers to get over. It's moving from what I call this permission mindset to a freedom mindset, where basically you get over, like, you're okay with some risk. You're okay. Mistakes are a good thing. They're looked at as a positive and necessary stepping stones to success. And you pursue what you're innately curious about.
You got me so fired up that the listeners are like, what does this guy do again? So when people ask you, what do you do for work, Kylon, what do you tell them?
Honestly, I think I say something like serial entrepreneur. I can just list off.
So what are some of your businesses? Really, what's keeping you alive right now?
So like I told you before, we have a hot yoga studio. We have two brick and mortar businesses, basically a hot yoga studio and a juice bar, and they're doing pretty well. We're looking at a second location for at least the juice bar, and hopefully franchising that or just expanding that. There's a lot of room to grow there. So those are two businesses. My first business was a residential commercial painting company. I sold that a couple of years ago to my business partner. I have the podcast, which is not heavily monetized right now, and we can go into that. That's more or less
building value for the long term. As a content creator for the last 20 years, that takes time, but it's worth it.
Okay. So yeah, you understand. But going into this year, we have some really exciting developments, a new platform we're developing for the community and stuff. I think we're experiencing a lot of growth, and we'll get to that point. So I do have the podcast, Successful Dropout podcast and community. It's been phenomenal. That's my one true passion. This is what I hope can turn into just something huge. But in addition to that, I work with a group of online investors as sort of a contract CEO. And essentially what we do is we acquire pretty successful online businesses and apply sort of a bag of tricks to them and effectively try to double or triple the growth and hold on to those in portfolio. So it's like if you're familiar with house flipping. Yeah. It's like online business flipping. So I'm sort of a contract CEO. I come in and manage those and one at a time and kind of work on building the growth there. And then I mentioned flipping. I do some real estate as well. So for a while, that was how we basically paid our bills, is I'd flip a house like every 6 months or something like that. And that just came out of my contracting experience with the painting and construction company early on. So
you're an extreme example of multiple revenue streams, which I'm a huge advocate of. And it seems like you have your hands in like the new economy and the old economy. You've hedged all your bets.
Yeah, well, and that doesn't even cover like what I've been everything from, I was a youth pastor for 2 years, really involved in ministry. After that, I enlisted in the military. I was in a band for
wow, you've really tried on a lot of different careers.
Yeah, we like toured all up and down the West Coast and stuff. Like we got to record in LA with Jack Johnson's producer. Wow. And chances are I've tried, just about every kind of broad path out there to try to make it work.
Where'd that come from? Why do you think you were like, most people are just frightened to like try all these different things, and what was it about you? Is it either naturally, or what did you learn in life to say, I'm going to keep trying a bunch of things?
Because I'm a rebel at heart, man. I mean, and if you listen,
I'm virtually high-fiving you right now. I am Gretchen Rubin, the Four Tendencies. I'm totally a rebel with a smidge of obligator.
If you listen to the podcast for just a few minutes, you kind of get that vibe. And so I've never wanted to just settle for, I've never wanted to do something just because I'm supposed to do it. And so I can look back on my life right now and say, 100%, I have always done or pursued anything that's ever interested me. I've tasted it, I've tried it, to the point where I've decided that this is not for me, or this is not a good direction. The military is a good example of this. And got out.
Yeah, not good for rebels, military.
Yeah. And exactly. And or it turns into something, like Successful Dropout that really grows. Or it's just like music, it's so hard to make it in the music industry. And at the end of the day, it's not a great industry to be in long term if you're I don't know, if you're if you like hanging out with like really good people and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I guess at the root of it, there's sort of this rebel like sort of spirit where I'm not willing to settle for anything less than what I love doing on a day-to-day basis. It's like what Steve Jobs said in his 2005 Stanford address. He's like something to the extent of, if I get up too many days in a row, look at myself in the mirror and just like, I just say to myself, like I'm thinking to myself, I hate what I'm doing, then it's time for a change. And so that's so on one hand, that's translated to a lot of really cool experiences, a lot of like successes, a lot of failures. Like I said, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
But don't you think you learned and accelerated your learning about skills, about life, about yourself by trying so many different things?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like a diamond, dude. How are diamonds made? It's just immense pressure. And, we did a whole episode on that as well. It's just, and it's so true. Like the more adversity, and just frankly, hell, sometimes you go through, the stronger person you become. You're tempered. You just become stronger. And all of a sudden, something that you thought was a huge deal and just would just lay you out a few years back, today now is just not that big of a deal. It doesn't even faze you. So you can take on bigger challenges, solve bigger problems. Basically the way I look at it is your problems become just better problems, bigger problems, right, to solve. That's what entrepreneurship is, I think, at its core. It's solving problems for other people.
Have you ever seen the movie The Martian?
Yeah. Oh, dude.
That's what I tell people. Like, I'm like, what is the future? And I'm like, well, if you've seen the movie The Martian, that's kind of like that's what it's going to be like. It's going to continually be solving a series of problems. There's not going to be this clear path where you just have to be trained to do this thing. You do it over and over again. That is going away. This is about constantly being engaged with other people and life, and you're working yourself. And because that's life, that's what it always was supposed to be, except the industrial economy beat us out of it, and we got to bring it back.
Oh yeah, and the school system. I mean, that's the biggest barrier people have. They come out and they think there's some sort of like set formula for success or starting a business.
Because they were trapped in a formula their entire life. So why wouldn't they expect the formula to continue?
Oh, exactly. And that's why. So I had there's a famous blogger. Has the blog Barking Up the Wrong Tree. It's Eric Barker, and I had him on the show because he did a post that went viral. It was all over the place for a while, and it was why valedictorians aren't millionaires, or why valedictorians don't do big things, something to that extent. He was essentially arguing, and he always. I like him because he always backs up all of his articles and posts with like scientific research. He has like a team of researchers and stuff. So he had all these statistics, and it basically showed that valedictorians, although they do go on to have really well-paying jobs, middle to upper class. They don't really do anything big. They're not like there's no valedictorian like Steve Jobs or they're not going from 0 to 1 as Peter Thiel would say. And it's because they're very, very good at operating within an already established system with rules and parameters, and so they do well with that. But when it comes to like what we're talking about, it's just the mentality is not there. So that's why you see. Go for it. Yeah.
For one quick second, because I was cruising on your website and there's this word that I think you said you coined, and I'm interested in learning more about this word, auto-credential. What the heck does that mean?
Auto-credentialing, yeah. So auto-credentialing, and I think I'm trying to, because I don't really like the way I coined that. I'm trying to recoin the words and turn auto-credentialing into direct and indirect credentialing. So essentially what auto-credentialing is, it's self-credentialing. So to just go over it really quick, when you spend all that time and money to earn a college degree, really all that degree is it's a credential.
Saying society says you're good.
Exactly. It's a piece of paper that says, I have accomplished this. I'm now ready to like enter the workforce, whatever. And way back in the day,
although you're really not prepared to enter the workforce, let's be honest.
Right. But I'm saying, back in the day, a lot of the times that was the only way that, say, employers could judge whether a candidate would be good for the job or not. If they graduated Harvard has a reputation for producing really sort of ambitious and motivated and really smart people. So if you had that credential, you were probably going to be good for the job. And this was pre-internet, a lot of the technology we have today. Today, though, it's so much easier to essentially build your own credential. And what I mean exactly by that, just one example, is having a personal website, your first and last name, or like you, Stephen, having your website and your podcast, a place where all of your work and your effort and your creativity and everything you've built is sort of on display. And the world is so connected nowadays. A potential employer can look at, say, your website and all the stuff you've done and your digital footprint. And there's this saying that, if it's not online, it doesn't exist. And I think that's becoming more and more true. And he can judge whether or not you're good for the job. Like that becomes your credential. And it's easier to do
I would argue you're showing your work. It's your portfolio of work. So you can show what you've done recently. I always loved Mike Wallace, 60 Minutes. He says, I'm only as good as my last story. Just because I've been doing this for a while doesn't mean anything. It's like I'm only good as that last piece of work. And I think that's another shift in our mentality of how we look at work. I think a lot of times people, being an employee, it's a very cozy cocoon that shields us from a lot of that risk that we have to continually take when you are out here outside of the corporate walls like you and I are.
Yeah, you nailed it. So that's essentially what auto-credentialing is this practice of self-credentialing. And I've since talked more in terms of direct credentialing and indirect credentialing, whereas direct credentialing is when essentially you are it's credentialing you get through experience and like building things and learning in the context of building things. Indirect credentialing is, say, like a third party institution like a college or something, just giving you a piece of paper and saying, hey, he knows enough to just go out into the workforce. And so that's sort of the difference there. It's a good starting point for, again, trying to explain to a lot of these high school, college students that I get to talk to on a daily basis now, like where they've come from, where they are now and how to get where they want to go. Because you have to understand sort of why your brain is operating the way it is. It's because you've been brought up in this system, and you need to sort of restructure, rewire things in your mind.
We have to reprogram ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Hey, I'd love to get a sense for how you work and how you think about work. Just want to ask you a bunch of quick questions, just looking for your gut response. All right.
All right, let's do it.
What time do you get up every day?
Oh, lately I've been pretty good about getting up at 5, but it's typically between 5 and 7. Yeah.
So to run all of your empire there, your businesses, what are the 3 core work activities that you have to do on a regular basis to make them successful?
To-do lists, and I use Trello to do that.
Love Trello.
That's huge. So I have categories. I have to separate all the tasks, right? I have categories for each business, and I drag those into sort of a master to-do list for that day, at the night before. And that sort of helps me keep track. Communication obviously is huge too, because I have business partners. I don't do this all myself. We have my wife, and then my business partner and his wife. So there's 4 of us that run couple of these businesses. So it's communicating with them is incredibly helpful. I can't think of another one right off the bat. Actually, things that I have to do. It's going to sound weird, but I do it's kind of like a to-do list, but not really. I do a little mental check every day at the end of the day. I'm a really deep thinker. My brain is just always going. Like analysis paralysis is like my my kryptonite, right? And so I really have to shut that off and just my policy is 80% action, 20% thinking on a daily basis. Like I've had to have this rule for myself, or I'll think too much, right? But at the end of the day, I do make an effort. I sit down and I have like this mental image in my mind of each business sort of comes to the forefront of my mind, and I do just a quick check. I think just really quickly about that business. If there's any red flags, anything I've missed, during the day, anything that needs to be taken care of right away. If things are on progress, and I try to have I done at least one thing to push it forward? If I have, I sort of, it's going to sound weird, but sort of mentally swipe it to the left, and then from the right, the other business comes in. So I go through this little mental exercise every day, pretty much. And after I'm done with that, I am able to mentally sort of shut my mind off from work and actually be with my wife or my friends or just, relax, watch some Netflix or something.
I hear you, man, as a person who also has an overactive mind.
Good. So you understand.
Yeah, it's an affliction. But at the same time, I also need things to be working on because my mind just needs to be chewing on it. It's like I'm like a dog that needs to be walked and run and played with.
Oh, totally.
Otherwise, totally I would be insane. How would you describe your ideal work environment? How, when, and where do you think you do your best work?
I do my best work when I am in my home office, and we live in a lodge in the mountains, and so I actually don't have cell service where we're at. I do have internet, so I do almost everything through Skype and FaceTime, and then I can walk out onto the road and get cell service pretty quick. But in my home office, there's no cell service. So if I'm here and I shut the door, it gets pretty quiet, and I play. So it's at home in my home office. I have a cup of coffee or cup of tea or something like that, and I play hardcore music. I listen to some pretty hardcore stuff, man. So I'll play bands like Dance Gavin Dance or A Day to Remember, just really hard rock. And I zen out and zone out to that and just get stuff done.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I should try that.
I'll sleep to that stuff too.
Oh my gosh.
It's interesting. The other day I was trying to Google why do I zen out to really hard rock, really hardcore music so easily?
I can't remember the name of the movie. It was all about the short selling that was done during the collapse of the economy in 2008.
Yeah.
The name of the movie.
The Big Short, I think.
The Big Short. And one of the main characters, there was a guy who was brilliant. Yes. I can't think of it, but he had to listen to that crazy music because that's how he was able to focus his brain. So you're not alone. That's my point.
I totally relate to that. Yeah, I even got the drumsticks every once in a while. I'll get those out because I'm a drummer was in the band. So I'll hit things too.
So what is your business goal for the next 90 days?
Which business? I'll tell you. Successful Dropout. I'll tell you, Successful Dropout's goal, I think, in the next 90 days, is to launch this new platform and get to 10,000 members. I think we can easily get 3,000 to 5,000, and so I'm hoping to push it a bit. It's kind of a bigger goal. I believe in setting goals a little bit that seem a little bit out of reach, so that would be it. Launch our new platform, get 10,000 users. We're launching like a really extensive, complex like forum and website and stuff to sort of move off the Facebook group into our own little space on the internet.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, awesome goals. Before I let you go, some coaching advice.
Yes.
For somebody who is, you're such an action-oriented guy. You just try so many different things. For somebody listening right now who is just afraid of just even trying something, doing a quick little experiment, doing something out of their normal routine, and they know that they should try it, but they're just paralyzed. What's one or two quick actions they could take to start getting out of their comfort zone, to try something new and different?
So do you know what your age group is, the demographics?
I would say like late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, so I'd say that's still really young. You still have a lot of time to try different things.
And
so
here's never to, even if you're in your 70s listening, you can still change.
Absolutely. And so I actually get, this is probably out of all the questions we get, this is in the top 5 questions I get all the time. And it's essentially, I have too many interests. I want to do something. I want to build a business, build something, do something on my own. But I have like 3, 4, 5 different options, or all these different interests or skills or curiosities. Like, what do I do? Which one do I pick? Which one will be successful? And I like to give this analogy of there's a donkey, and the donkey's standing, and you might have heard this before. I don't know where it's from, but the donkey's standing halfway between a trough of water and some hay. And the donkey is both hungry and thirsty, but it stands there between the hay and the water. It can't decide whether to go over and drink the water and quench its thirst, or to go take care of its hunger and eat the hay. And so it stands there trying to decide until eventually it dies of both hunger and thirst. All this whole time not realizing that it could first go over and drink the water and then go over and eat the hay and satisfy both needs. And so that's basically, this is what I've done my whole life. Is I went and I've tried something. I probably could have been better about setting like certain benchmarks or metrics, basically ways to measure progress or failure. But I've went and I've tried something. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, you switch, pivot, or quit. And so that's the advice I would have, is don't get so hung up on, I have all these interests. What do I do? I have to decide and pick the right one, and I have to do this for 5-10 years and build it into this giant thing. Even if you have to eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick one, get started, maybe give yourself a timeline saying, for 1 year, I'm just going to focus on this. I'm going to say no to any other opportunity, and I'm going to try to make this work. And if it doesn't, you're going to reevaluate or quit or move on to something else. And so, that's the advice and that doesn't, it's really hard to tell somebody that and just have them feel okay and like, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know what else to tell you. You have to do it. You have to pick something and get started. And
just see how it goes. I always tell people, just think of it as an experiment. Just try it for a week, try it for an hour, try it for a day. I just have my mom in my head just listening to you. She would be like, Stephen, stop, think about it, and just do something. And she was right.
And Stephen, the last thing I think I'll leave with is this concept of action and inspiration. So people have this really linear view, and I did for the longest time of what accomplishing and building things look like. They think that they sit around and think and wait for this inspiration, like this business idea and the perfect logo and how things are going to be organized and designed. And they wait for the inspiration. Once they get it, then you take action, and then you wait for some more inspiration, and then you take action. It's this really linear way of viewing it, when that's not the case at all. It's more cyclical. Basically, action begets more action. So if you just start, like today, like pick one thing that you can do today to move whatever this project or thing you're going to build forward. One thing. If you just start, this very act of taking action and just getting in and starting to figure things out, the next step will become clear. And after that, the next step will become clear. And after that, 5 more steps in front of you will become clear. And just by actually getting in there and doing it, you start this process. You're more creative. You're going to have better ideas. Because like you're in it, right? I mean,
But what you're talking about to me is you're leaning into your curiosity. You're having faith in your curiosity, and you're feeding your curiosity. And I think a lot of times what's happening is people are starving or not trusting their curiosity.
Yeah, or they're just getting too hung up. It's just this analysis paralysis. They're getting hung up on all these questions, or thinking that they have to have a certain amount figured out before they get started, and it couldn't be further from the two. You need to get started, and sort of I call it just in time learning. And again, in school we're taught it mostly just in case learning. Learn all this stuff, pack it away just in case you might have to use it someday. Whereas just in time learning is what I'm a real advocate of, and I think it is the one factor that really separates high achievers, like people in their early 20s and stuff who are just killing it already. And people that it's just for whatever reason, it's taken them more time, because just in time learning, it's always learning in the context of doing something or pursuing something. It's this real time feedback that you're getting. And so if you don't know how to do something, you just got to start. And then when you come to like a roadblock, I don't know how to do this, you can learn how to do it. I mean, you've got YouTube. There's so many different resources out there. You can learn how to do it. And in the context of learning and while you're doing, you actually retain that information more too. And so it's just a much more efficient way to learn and progress. But you just got to get started. You can't overthink it.
I could talk to you for hours, but we got to let our listeners get to work or finish up their workouts, whatever they're doing while they listen to us. So I am really enjoying this conversation. Where can we send folks to learn more about everything that you're working on?
Just head over to successfuldropout.com, and from there you can connect with me. You can join the Facebook group for now. That's where we all hang out, and people are always it's growing, and it's a really engaging group. And pretty soon we'll be moving, like I said, to our own forum basically. But successfuldropout.com, and from there. There's all sorts of different ways to get a hold of me, and please reach out. I talk to people on a daily basis. Yesterday I was on the phone for like an hour with one of my listeners. It's what I live for. I love it. So please do reach out, and I'd love to chat. You and me both. And we'll have links to how you can connect with Kylon and everything else that we talked about in the show notes at lifeskillsthatmatter.com. Thank you so much. I mean, my brain is so full right now. I cannot wait to go back and listen to this as I work on the show notes, because I have a lot of little nuggets that I want to pull out. Thank you, man.